This is why I'll abandon the palace forever. The palace was never as beautiful as people thought. Yes, the walls shined, the garden stretched far, and the gold on the doors sparkled under the sun. But behind those bright surfaces, everything felt cold. The air inside the halls was heavy, carrying secrets that never reached the outside world. I grew up believing the palace was a place of dreams, a gift from fate. Every step I took was watched. Every word I spoke was judged. I was told I should feel lucky. Lucky to eat from golden plates. Lucky to sleep in a bed so soft it swallowed me whole. Lucky to have guards protecting me at every corner. But what no one said was that every piece of that luck came with invisible chains. I couldn't walk freely. I couldn't speak my heart. I couldn't even laugh too loudly without whispers following me down the hall. Every smile I gave was measured. Every move I made was controlled. And the worst part? They wanted me to believe this was normal. One evening, as I looked out from the tallest window, I saw the world beyond the palace walls. The streets weren't polished, the houses weren't shiny, but there was something there I hadn't seen in years. Freedom, children running with bare feet, people talking without fear, neighbors laughing loudly without caring who listened. It hit me like a storm. They were free to be themselves, while I was locked inside a cage dressed in gold. That night I whispered to myself words I'd never said out loud before. This is why I'll abandon the palace forever. It wasn't just about leaving walls and rooms. It was about leaving behind the weight of being someone I never chose to be. For once I wanted to live without being watched. For once I wanted to breathe without feeling the palace tightening its grip on my chest. The first time I felt the pull toward freedom was in a place no one else paid attention to. The servants' corridor. It was narrow, dark, and far from the polished halls where I was meant to walk. But I had wandered there by accident one evening, trying to escape the endless lessons and duties that kept stacking over me like stones. I stopped when I heard laughter. Not the fake kind, not the kind used to impress, but real, free laughter that echoed against the walls. A group of workers were sharing a simple meal. Bread, soup, nothing fancy. Yet the way they laughed, talked, and teased each other made that tiny, dim space feel brighter than any golden chamber I had ever stepped into. I stood hidden in the corner, watching. They didn't notice me at first. One of them told a silly story that made the others laugh so hard their eyes watered. There was no fear in their voices, no weight in their words. They were just living. And in that moment, I realized they had something the palace could never give me, the right to be themselves. When one of them finally spotted me, they fell silent for a moment, unsure of how to act. But instead of bowing or apologizing, one of them smiled and offered me a piece of bread. It was rough, plain, not the kind of food served in golden dishes. But when I took it, it felt more precious than any feast I had ever been forced to sit through. That small act stayed with me. It wasn't about the bread. It was about the fact that for the first time I was treated as a person, not a title, not a symbol. And as I walked back to my chambers, the thought kept burning inside me. How could I live surrounded by riches, yet starve for something as simple as freedom and kindness? That night, lying in the softest bed anyone could imagine, I couldn't sleep. All I could think of was that simple corridor, those free voices, and that piece of bread that tasted like truth. It was then I knew the palace wasn't my home, it was my prison. The day the palace showed its cruelty began quietly. No storms, no shouting, just another morning where the sun slid through the curtains, painting the floor in gold. I thought it would be ordinary, but sometimes the worst truths arrive without warning. It started with a young maid. She had dropped a tray in the dining hall. Cups shattered, liquid spilled across the marble floor. A mistake anyone could make. Her hands shook as she bent to clean, whispering apologies, her face pale with fear. But instead of helping her, the palace guards dragged her away. Not gently, not with compassion. They pulled her like she was nothing more than a broken object. And when I asked where she was taken, the answer was a silence so heavy it made my stomach twist. Later that day, I passed by the servants' quarters. The laughter I had once heard there was gone. The same workers who had shared their bread looked down at the ground, eyes red, lips pressed shut, as if speaking would bring more punishment. No one dared to mention her name. It was as though she had been erased, not just from the palace, but from existence. That was the moment it hit me like a blade. This palace didn't protect people, it consumed them. One mistake, and you were gone. It didn't matter if you were a worker, a guard, or even someone like me. The palace had no heart. That night, I couldn't eat. The golden plates, the endless dishes, all of it felt poisoned, because I knew the truth. Every sparkle, every gem, every polished stone was built on the suffering of people who couldn't fight back. The palace didn't shine because it was beautiful. It shined because it stole the light from others. I stood by the window again, looking out at the streets, where voices carried freely. The thought returned, stronger than ever, I didn't belong here. I couldn't keep living in a place that crushed souls and silenced laughter. And deep inside, I whispered again to myself, this is why I'll abandon the palace forever. Once the truth of the palace became too heavy to ignore, I knew I couldn't just sit and wait for freedom to come. It would never be offered to me. If I wanted to leave, I had to take it with my own hands. The first step was watching carefully. Every guard, every locked gate, every narrow passage. I studied them as if my life depended on it. I noticed when the guards changed shifts, when the kitchen doors opened, and which servants walked in and out without being questioned. I realized that while the palace seemed impossible to escape, it wasn't perfect. It only looked that way because everyone inside was too afraid to try. The second step was finding something simple, a reason to walk where I wasn't supposed to. So I began helping with small tasks no one expected me to do. Carrying books to the library, folding fabrics in the storage room, asking to see how food was prepared. It made me look harmless, as though I was curious instead of planning. But really, I was memorizing every hidden door and every corner where shadows fell thick. Still, I knew slipping away wouldn't be easy. The palace was built to hold people in, not just to keep outsiders away. If I disappeared suddenly, alarms would ring and they would drag me back before I even reached the gates. That's when the third step came to me. I had to leave in plain sight, not sneaking through the darkest passage, but walking out as if I belonged outside. I studied the clothing of the servants, the way they carried baskets and wore plain cloth around their shoulders. If I could blend in with them, I might pass through without a second glance. The thought scared me, but it also lit something inside me I hadn't felt in years. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I could breathe air that didn't belong to the palace. Hope that I could hear my own footsteps without them echoing back against golden walls. That night, lying in my bed, I didn't whisper the usual promise. I spoke it louder in my mind, almost daring the walls to hear me. This is why I'll abandon the palace forever, not someday, soon. The first real test of my plan came faster than I expected. It happened on a morning that looked ordinary. The same polished halls, the same routine, the same endless commands. But deep inside I was carrying a secret. No one else knew today. I would take my first step toward leaving. I had managed to borrow a servant's plain cloth folding it neatly beneath my own robe so it wouldn't be seen. My heart pounded as I walked toward the storage room, where baskets of fruit and bread were kept before being carried out to the market gates. This was my chance. If I could walk with them, blend in for just a short while, I could test if the guards noticed me or not. When I entered the room, the workers were busy, their hands moving quickly, stacking baskets and tying ropes. I lowered my head, copying their quiet movements, and picked up a small basket, as if I had done it 100 times before. No one looked at me twice. No one questioned why I was there. But as I followed them toward the courtyard, I felt the air grow heavy. The guards were waiting near the gates, their eyes sharp, scanning each person who passed. My palms grew damp against the basket handle. Every step closer, I told myself to breathe slowly, not to look up, not to draw attention. When it was my turn to walk past, one guard's eyes lingered on me. My chest tightened. I thought it was over. I thought he would drag me back inside, accuse me of sneaking where I didn't belong, but instead, he only frowned, then turned away to check another basket. I walked through just like that. The air beyond the courtyard touched my face, cool and free, and for a moment I almost wanted to keep going, to run and never look back. But I knew this wasn't the day to escape completely. If I vanished now, unprepared, they would find me. So, I turned back with the others once our task was done. I walked the same quiet path back into the palace walls. But inside, my heart was no longer the same. I had seen the outside not through a window, but with my own steps.